Today's episode is brought to you by Ascension Press. For the first time in more than 50 years, the church in the United States will begin praying with a new translation of the Liturgy of the Hours. This long-awaited update marks a historic moment in the church's daily prayer life, especially for clergy and the religious who regularly pray this powerful prayer. Ascension has been chosen by the USCCB as one of the official publishers for this new edition. The Ascension edition has been beautifully designed with a custom font and top-of-the-line typesetting, original commissioned artwork from Ruth Strickland of New Jerusalem Studios, and durable, high-quality materials, plus 8 satin ribbons. Available in 3 cover materials and both standard and large print formats, these page numbers are going to match between the standard and the large print. Ascension's edition of the Liturgy of the Hours, the second edition, is now available for pre-order, either individual volumes or the full 4-volume bundle. Volume 2 will ship on January 1st, 2027, just in time for use, beginning on Ash Wednesday, February 10th, 2027. You can get your pre-order in today by going to ascensionpress.com/CMP. Let them know that we sent you. That's ascensionpress.com/CMP. And now, on with the show.
If you work for the Catholic Church and want to reclaim time for discipleship, we're here to help. I'm Tai Hua here with John Kahns, and this is the Catholic Ministry Professionals Podcast, your favorite leadership development podcast for Catholic churches. John, how are you?
Tai, I am doing great. We just came back from sunny Florida, and so if you're seeing a little special glow about my face, it's just all that beautiful sunshine. We did Disney. We swam with dolphins, all the things that you're supposed to do when you're in Florida. So, I mean, I think it was a success.
Did you golf?
No.
Well, you said you did all the things you should do in Florida.
That would be if we were going on vacation in Florida. But my kids don't golf. I'm working on it, though. But, yeah, no, we're here. We're back. We haven't had you in the studio in a little while.
Yeah, I'm getting kind of pushed out, I feel, with all these awesome guests you're having, and yeah, I get it.
Yeah, well, we try to go with the best of the best. Well, that's good. Anything new on the radar for you?
Not really.
No,
Just
nothing you want to share with the good people. All right.
I just don't think I don't think anybody cares.
Okay, fair enough. Well,
just pray for me.
Let's just dive in then. Well, yeah, so let's talk today. Today we're going to look at how we might be doing some work right now in our parishes, knowing that somebody else on the team or a volunteer could be doing that. But for some reason, it's still on our plates. And if we're honest, part of us isn't sure that we're ready to let it go. And we want to talk about the ins and outs of that problem when someone is doing all of the things when they'd be leveraged for leadership better if they were able to hand some of them off. And this is what's happening in so many of our rural parishes, is that the leader who can't let go, they feel like they're protecting something, but what they're really doing is just refusing to get uncomfortable. They're choosing to stay comfortable. And this can show up typically in 3 ways. The first of this is that we think it's just faster if I do it myself, which I experience in parenting so many times. If I'm working on a project, it's like, yeah, I could teach my son how to do this, but it's going to take me 3 times longer, right? And that might be true in the moment, but it's costly over time, especially if I want him to start mowing the lawn. The second is that we might just say, well, they're just not ready to do this yet. And that might be true. But then again, when are we going to take time to make them ready? We have to answer that question. And then the third way it often shows up is that we just think if it goes wrong, it falls back on me, right? And that one is true, right? And we do feel the responsibility for that. But what it does is it keeps our team permanently dependent on us, and in a bad way. Deeper in this, though, I think there is a hard truth I want to put out there, and that's that the tasks we're holding on to are often the easy ones. They're familiar. They have clear endpoints. We do them and they're done. And we feel like then we've done the job. But leadership in ministry doesn't work that way. Leadership is slower. It's messier. It's harder to measure. And it's never going to really get the attention, though, as long as the inbox is full. And so here's what that produces over time. And this is what we see very often in our rural parishes. We have a parish where one person's personality becomes the entire culture or the entire program. And that's terrible, because when we have a turnover in priests or we have a turnover in leadership, suddenly that program doesn't work and we have to reinvent the entire wheel. This is where, maybe a pastor's blind spots never get named because no one is empowered, to name them. Or they're just not taking an honest look at themselves so that they can name where they lack, so they can put the right people in place to make up for it. And this is where then the status quo just gets named as tradition, and nobody questions it. We do this because it's what we've always done, whether it's working or not. And that's not just a Catholic culture problem. That's a leadership problem. And it starts with whoever's at the top refusing to let some things go, to delegate a few things, bring other people into leadership. And then the team stays stuck at the level where we found them. The parish is never made better because of our presence. And the people in the parish who need to be accompanied, formed, sent, they're just left waiting. Right?
What's the most, what, John, sorry to interrupt. What's the most common thing you see leaders holding on to that they definitely shouldn't be?
Yeah. I honestly, decision making, I think, is one of the big things. And we did talk about that a little bit in the last episode, is that we have sometimes pastors who have to make all the decisions for everything. And sometimes that's an insecurity, right? I just need to hold on to this because I'm afraid that if I let it go, I won't be able to keep up. Other times that's just the worker that's never stepped into leadership themselves and said, Father, I'm willing to make this decision, but they've never had that conversation. I really think that that's one of the big places where we experience this. I don't know, what do you see? You're kind of in the secular side of the world, of the workplace. What do you see on a leadership level where leaders hold on to things that they definitely shouldn't be, or it's time to let it go?
This is going to be a real kick in the nuts for a lot of sales managers or C-suite executives. They want something that they can either check off on the list or report that they did. So I think where the kick in the nuts comes in is that you need to let go of being the person who gets the credit. I think that's what most managers hang on to. It's like, well, if I don't do this and I show up to a manager's meeting or a quarterly meeting or whatever type of meeting, and I said that I didn't do this, it's going to reflect poorly on me. Where I think from the standpoint of the person that is receiving the report, I would much rather see you being the one coordinating those things, right? You don't have to say, hey, I did it, but it was under my purview that it got done. That's what's more important. And it got done effectively. The flip side of that, I think you may have kind of alluded to it, but it's like, I don't want to be uncomfortable having those conversations of like, well, why didn't it get done? It's just easier for me to just get it done and, have a ton on my plate versus just saying, hey, can you take this over and let me know when it gets done? If there's any issues, let's kind of tag team and get it taken care of. But I need you to take care of that. Where a lot of people don't really know how to, one, hand that off and delegate those things, and two, having good enough conversations that empower people to do probably a better job than you can do, if I'm being honest.
I think comfort's a really important word there, because we don't want to let go of comfort. We want to show up, feel like we're doing a good job. Everybody's happy. The team morale is high. We want to feel like that. And so we'll sacrifice those uncomfortable conversations, like you said, that need to happen for that. And we do see that a lot in the parish, where we've got one grumpy person, the front office lady, or whoever it might be, the custodian who's really grumpy all the time. And we never let go of our comfort to actually challenge them to do better, or else like you need to grow as a professional, or maybe you're not called to professional ministry in this way and in this capacity.
I think too, the other aspect, maybe it's just on the secular side, and you can correct me on the parish side, but it's like, if I ask you to do something and you don't know how to do it, then I have to train you.
Yeah.
So I'm already doing it. Why don't I just take care of it? I could do it myself faster, right? Just like you had that example with your kids. It's like, no, you as a leader should be training, right? Jesus didn't say, hey, disciples, I'll do it myself. I can do it a lot faster. I can heal this guy real fast of leprosy or blindness, lameness, all these different things. He showed them how to do it. And then what does he tell them to do? Right? Like, or tells them to do, go out and do it. Right? You have these powers that I'm giving to you, and you're actually going to do greater things than I. That's literally what he does. That is the format.
Absolutely.
So it only takes, maybe you have to train them a couple of times. Big deal, right? But do it out of Christian generosity, that I'm empowering you to do it, and I'm going to hold you accountable because I will be held accountable.
Well, that's one of our big pillars, is having rhythms of accountability that don't mean you have to have a separate staff meeting or a separate meeting, like progress meeting with each individual staff member every week, but that we are holding each other accountable as a team. And then maybe once or twice a year, quarterly, you're having that simple performance review where you're sitting down with a staff member, but make it predictable so it's not this overwhelming burden, but rather just the way we operate as a team. Make it predictable. So let's break open some of that here in our 3 things today, because I do think we're going to get into a little bit of some of this process, particularly for those people who are in an area of leadership and they feel like they're having trouble offloading some of the things that they do. They're just busy, and they do feel that weight of, I wish we were doing more, or I wish I was doing something at a higher level. How do we begin to do exactly that, where we can offload those tasks to some of those people who are ready in our parish for a higher level of leadership? And the first thing we need to do is actually name what we're holding, right? You need to pull up your calendar and your task list, and I want you to just look for anything that you've done consistently for like 6 months or more, not because it requires your specific expertise, right? So if you're the pastor, you're not looking at mass because you're probably the only person who can do mass, but you're looking at all your meetings, you're looking at all of the little touch points that you have to do day in and day out. And it's been on your plate and it's never left. And a good place, I think, for most people in ministry to start is our recurring meetings. And we've talked about this in the past, but I want you to ask 3 questions about any of these meetings. And the questions are, is there anything happening at this meeting that couldn't be summarized in an email? We have a lot of these meetings where we're just meeting to tell each other things that we could have read, and it takes an hour and a half instead of 15 minutes to read. The second one is, does my presence at the meeting change the outcome of the meeting, the outcomes that come, the decisions that are made? And then the third one is just am I canonically required to be there? Do I have to be there for this? And if the answer to all 3 of these is no, that meeting is on your list of things to delegate. It's yours to condense, it's yours to cut, it's yours to improve. But a meeting is just one example of these types of things that might be on your plate. There could be bulletin announcements. There could be, other weekly communications, flock notes, social media posting, event logistics, room setup and coordination, volunteer coordination, all the emails that go out for mass, registrations for formation events, follow-up from parish programs. The list is longer than you think of the things that might be on your plate that potentially could be delegated to someone else. And Ty, I actually want to ask you this question really quick. Have you ever handed something off and regretted it? And kind of walk us through that, because that's probably what people are thinking is, well, if I handed this off, these are the 14 things that are going to go wrong. And I want to talk about how some of that's normal, and then also we'll talk a little bit about how we adjust as we go.
I don't know if I wouldn't say I regretted doing it. I think I regretted how I did it, right? Because it's a perception standpoint. I regret it. Like, I thought that when I handed this to you and I said, do this, that you were going to do this. On the flip side, when it got air quotes, done, and it gets back to my desk, I'm just like, what is this? Well, I did exactly what you said. This, and this. I'm just like, no, that's not what I meant. Oh, well, what did you mean? And they proceed to tell me what information they got from me in that conversation. I'm like, oh, I could see where you would have came up with that conclusion. That's not what I meant. Here's what I meant. And they're like, oh yeah, I can get that done. So I never regretted handing it off, but I do regret how I communicated what I wanted done. Maybe that's kind of a better way to put it. But having freed up my time was more beneficial than trying to do it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really what we're looking at here is when you free up that time, you then can fill it with something that's that higher level operational leadership, especially within the context of your work and your purview. And the communication is going to be key here. And we're going to revisit that here in our third thing from this week. So I want you to hold on to that idea and that kind of that example. The second thing after you've named what you're holding is to identify one thing to hand off. Because I think if you try to do 10 things, now you're managing 10 handoffs on top of all the other stuff you have to do. You can't hand over everything. Not everything, not a full overhaul in 1 week. Just pick one thing. Take that one meeting where your presence doesn't change the outcome and stop going. You can hand it, yes, to another, like maybe the DRE, or you can hand it to your pastoral associate. Sure, make your pastoral associate go, your most capable volunteer, your deacon, whoever, and give them a clear outcome that you want from it. Or what I would really suggest is if you don't need to be there, you don't change the outcome of the meeting. It could have been an email, yada, yada, yada. I would signal that clearly and just tell the people like, hey, I'm not going to be attending this meeting going forward, but I do want to know what's going on. So I want you to just record the meeting and send me the recording. Or better yet, train them to create meeting minutes, meeting notes with the things that you need to know or want to know from this meeting. Again, like Ty said, you have to kind of make clear the outcome that you want, ask some follow-up. It'll probably take a little troubleshooting, a little bit of follow-through here. But then just give yourself permission to not have to sit in the room while this meeting is happening. And the temptation is going to be to wait until you have the entire training plan in and the backup plan. But you don't need it. Just pick one person, one clear task, the person running the meeting, say, hey, I want you to record this, and start there. And just excuse yourself from being in it. And boom, suddenly you've got another free hour in the week that can be applied towards the mission of the church. And then the third thing that I would say, and this is where, exactly what you're talking about, Ty. Oh, I see how you got that. This is what I want instead, right? That foundation that you're trying to build, right? You're building a floor, not a ceiling, right? So when you hand something off, you tell the person what a good outcome looks like, not necessarily how to do it your way, but this is what the outcome is. This is what success looks like. And so for that meeting, what needs to be decided, what needs to be reported, what needs to move forward, that's the floor. How they get there is up to them. But then your deliverable is separate from them. And that's probably not a one-time conversation, right? You're going to have to check in with them once in a while. You need to let them know that you still care, even though you're not present at the meeting. Then that says, yeah, maybe this meeting is important, even if it's not necessary for me to be there. So if you notice a gap forming in this area, the outcome, maybe your outcome is slipping, maybe you're not receiving, something's following through, then you can adjust the process and move forward that way. And that's not micromanaging. That's actually leadership. That's shepherding. And you're not lowering your standard. You're giving them room to meet the standard, and you're staying close enough to know when they need help. And so, Ty, I would actually ask you the question, what does it look like when a leader hands something off well versus when it goes sideways? Because you kind of gave us that sideways. Have you seen some examples of how that's been done well? Either something's been handed off to you or you've handed something off to someone else?
Well, it gives more input to whatever you're trying to get done, right? Because I can, in my brain, say, here's exactly what I want done. But then if you allow your team member the autonomy to try to get it done in a better way, they may have a better solution for whatever you're trying to get done. There's been many times where I'm thinking, okay, a really good outcome would be, let's say this this account in for sales. This account, yeah, probably is worth about $200-$300. Well, I hand it off. Hey, can you go close this account? And then they come back. They're like, yeah, I continued the conversation. I actually uncovered more of a need for them to use our product. And now that $200 or $300 account turned into $1,000 account, where I had the conversation, I did this or whatever the case may be with this account. They're more in tune with the actual industry, right? They're making the calls of direct clients, right? To these direct clients, excuse me. I'm more on the corporate side. Okay, here are the dealer agreements, here are the NDAs, here are all these different things that have nothing to do with the actual client using our products. My team member is actually in tune with the client. They actually know the verbiage that they're using. They understand the pains and the discomforts of what they're going through better than I do. So when they are able to have those conversations, they can handle those conversations with a little bit more empathy than me. So that's a really good example of why handing something off to a team member, now granted that is with sales and not with parish ministry, they understand it a little bit better, right? So I don't know if of an equivalent example, maybe you can offer that one up, John, for the parish side.
I could think of a few. One that for me, whenever I go and do talks at parishes, a lot of times the leaders will go, well, you just talk about whatever you want, or, we just want you to come in, and it's like a blank check, which is really, it sounds great on surface, but the other side is I always come back and I say, listen, I don't know your parishioners. I don't know where they're at. So at the bare minimum, I want to know, is there anything that's going on in the community, or what's your parish's unique poverty that you experience? And sometimes that poverty as well, there is no poverty, so they never serve the poor, and they've got a lot of money, so they don't feel like they need God, and sometimes there's a community that says, well, actually, we did have a car accident recently, and someone, a teenager died or something, and the community is really reeling from that. So yeah, there's a need to have people who understand the community feed into that. Same thing, I took over a parish a number of years ago, and they had just switched to a family formation model. And I had, at that time, no kids. And so I was in charge of this formation, and I was going to have all these kids and parents. And the parents came in and said, actually, we really want to help you with this, and we'll help with all the activities that are going to happen. So I got to guide the curriculum, the formational piece, but I didn't have to try to do the Jesus arts and crafts, which for my entire life, I've said, this is not, I don't think that way. I'm just not an arts and crafts guy. The felt banners and stuff, they've got their purpose, but I don't see it, and I don't know how to implement it well. So the parents took it over, right? So that's exactly what we're talking about, is giving people the opportunity to step into these areas where they're going to be more excellent than we are, and trusting, having the humility, one, to accept them to step into that, but then also having the faith to step out then in a different capacity as a leader. And that builds just a more robust team. It builds a more robust culture. It gets input and buy-in from people in a different level when they see, oh, wow, people are really gathering and entering into this in a deeper way. And so I do want to just take a moment and look at a passage that from Scripture that I think frames this entire conversation really well. It grounds it. These aren't just business principles. This is scriptural. In Exodus chapter 18, Moses is leading the entire people of Israel, and he's doing it alone. Every single dispute, every question, every decision runs through him. So his father-in-law Jethro watches this for a day, and then he pulls Moses aside, and he says, what you're doing is not good. You will wear yourself out and the people with you. This task is too heavy. You cannot do it alone. And then he gives Moses a leadership framework. Find capable, trustworthy people, set the standard, hand the work off, and only bring the hardest cases to yourself. Now, Moses wasn't being lazy when he delegated. He was being faithful. The mission was bigger than one man's capacity, and clinging to every decision, it wasn't humility, it was a liability. And that's the reframe for today, right? That's that holding on to everything isn't serving your people. It's slowing the mission down. So, again, take a moment to consider this and how it might apply to your own ministry. And
What a
with that,
great scripture.
absolutely, it's so good. It hits home on every level for what we're talking about with CMP right now.
Yeah, if Moses had to get called out, man, I can name a couple of people in the secular world, not the parish ministry world, though I can probably come up with a few.
I can call
I
him
need
out.
to get called out. Yeah. Yeah, if you want us to call them out, go ahead and comment their name and phone number and we'll call them. And
All right. And with that, I think we can move on to the devil's advocate.
before I get into that, I'm pretty offended that you won't even just let me do it.
Wait, go. All right. Why don't you give us your version?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Devil's advocate. There's a time and place for everything, John. And everything sounds good in theory, but until you actually do it, man, I just don't want to hand things off and then it goes wrong and then I get blamed for it, right? I'm the pastor or I'm the DRE. I have to do everything because it reflects poorly on me if it doesn't get done right. So if I'm responsible for everything that happens in this parish, why would I hand it off for somebody else to screw up?
Yeah, that's something that a lot of us feel. And part of the reason that it's so strong is that there's a piece of it that's true. You are responsible. But here's what that argument actually produces is a team that never grows, a leader who burns out, and a parish that is just permanently dependent on one person's capacity. So the harder truth of that, like even though, yes, it's true that you're responsible for it, the harder truth is that responsibility and execution are not the same thing. You are responsible for the outcome, but you are not required to be the one who produces it, right? Just like Moses. Moses was responsible for the people of Israel, but he wasn't required to settle every dispute himself. The risk of delegation, yeah, there's a reality to that. Someone might drop the ball, a meeting might go sideways, a process might need to be corrected. But the cost of never delegating is certain, and you're already paying it. So the question isn't whether, something could go wrong, but the question is whether you're willing to risk that to do something greater, to do something better. It's whether you're called to more and you're just settling for what's easy. I don't know. I think, Ty, is there a point at which a leader has delegated or could delegate too much?
Yeah.
Yeah. Say more about that.
When you have a worthless leader, and what are the fruits of a worthless leader? Culture is terrible. Everybody's wondering what the leader actually does, right? Like if your teammates ever utter these words, or if you hear somebody uttering these words, you know the leader is probably not doing a great job. It's like they keep giving me all the stuff. They keep giving it to the team, but yet they're on the computer, they're on their phone scrolling, they're not doing anything that's helping the cause, but yet they continually delegate stuff to other people that they don't know how to do it. Or they delegate it, but they don't train people to do it effectively.
Yeah. Well, so this is kind of like the checks and balances for what we said before. There's probably meetings you don't need to attend. That said, if you're not at any meetings, you're probably not leading anything. I've known pastors that sometimes just like, well, I'm just not going to do confessions today. And they just write a note and they post it on the confessional, gone fishing. That's bad leadership, right? So yes, you can delegate too much, especially if you're delegating the things that only you can do. You're the only priest and you're just not going to show up for mass or for confessions, right? And you can delegate so much that you have nothing to do. And then you're just sitting in your office, like scrolling through Word on Fire, ordering free samples or free copies of every curriculum and, never intending to use any of them, right? That's bad leadership. You've delegated too much if you're not actively engaged in the ministry. And so it's important to stay close enough to the work, close enough to the people that you know what's happening without being the one that has to do everything. And so there is a little bit of balance there. And of course, go ahead.
I will also say there's another on the flip side of that. When a leader schedules so many meetings that you can't get anything done, but yet they also won't get out of their own way to allow other people to do it, right? So if every day you've got 3 or 4 meetings that take up 3 or 4 hours of your day, you're effectively only working for 4 or half of the day.
Yeah.
So if we're in so many meetings every single day talking about the same BS, you're not being an effective leader. You don't want to delegate because of the number of other reasons that we've already talked about. Then you're going to start creating a toxic work environment. Or you're going to create an environment where people want to leave. They're going to be burnt out. Right? In our old promos, it's like, do you want to avoid burnout? Do you want to overcome team dysfunction? Well, that's part of a very dysfunctional team where you can't get anything done, right? The 4 disciplines of execution. Well, what is the point of doing any and all of this? What is the point of our ministry? Is to get results. It's to win more souls to Jesus. So if we're just here for meetings and a paycheck, I'm sorry, you need to leave ministry. You are harming the church.
And we've seen the fruit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on the flip side of that, of course, there's always things that we can do to reverse that trend if that's been your experience. And so here's the things following from what we talked about above. Step 1, open your calendar this week and find one recurring meeting, one task that happens every week that you don't necessarily need to do, and run it through those questions that we talked. Is there anything that's happening in this meeting that can't be summarized in an email? Does your presence change the outcome? Are you canonically required to do this thing? And if the answer to those 3 is no, find the person you're handing it off to, or find the person who's going to be responsible and accountable to you to report, and have that conversation before Friday. Step 2, second thing you can do, share this episode with your priest or a friend in ministry that can benefit from it, and share that conversation today. And finally, if you want help figuring out where your time is actually going, what's worth handing off to someone else, you can book a discovery call at CatholicMinistryProfessionals.com, and we'll work through it together. And finally, if what we're covering today is hitting close to home, here's the thing. Most leaders don't know what to hand off first because they've really never looked at where their time is going. So we've put together a free ministry time audit. It's a 1-page tool, just a handful of questions that shows you exactly where your hours are going and where there's room to shift. And you can download that at CatholicMinistryProfessionals.com/time audit, and you can start right there. And with that, I want to thank you for listening to the Catholic Ministry Professionals podcast. Please take a moment to subscribe and leave us a review.
And with that, we'll see you in the vineyard.